While everyone knows Aragorn is awesome, it turns out that he actually had quite an impressive resume before the entire One Ring business even kicked off. If you've ever wondered what he was up to in the years before The Lord of the Rings, keep watching. To understand how this ranger from the wilderness winds up claiming the throne of the kingdom, you've first got to back up about 6,000 years. At the beginning of the Second Age, a kingdom of men was founded on the island of Númenor, to the west of the coasts of Middle-earth. The first of the kings of the Númenóreans was a man named Elros, the brother of Elrond of Rivendell. While Elrond famously chose to live an immortal life, Elros opts to live out his life as a mortal man. Elros was the first of a long line of kings that rules Númenor for over 3,000 years. Even when the powerful island nation was destroyed, the bloodline continued to rule over the offshoot kingdoms of Gondor and Arnor on the mainland. Eventually, though, the family line faded into oblivion, ruling a scattered people under the title of the Chieftains of the Dúnedain. In Gondor, the last king of the bloodline died 1,000 years before The Lord of the Rings takes place, leaving the stewards in charge of the kingdom until a king should come and reclaim the throne. This is what leads to the steward Denethor leading the city when it's attacked in Return of the King. In the north, though, there are no stewards to serve as long-term placeholders. Instead, the kingdom of Arnor is completely destroyed. In reaction to this, the surviving members of the royal family and their descendants eventually head into a sort of semi-exile under the new title of the Chieftains of the Dúnedain. Under this new name, the chieftains rule over the scattered remnants of their people who quietly fight against the Dark Lord as rangers. The Chieftains of the Dúnedain rule for 1,000 years before the last one, Aragorn, arrives on the scene. As the last century of the Third Age begins, Aragorn's parents, Arathorn and Gilrin, get married, and little baby Aragorn is born 1 short year later. 2 years after that, his father is shot through the eye with an arrow while helping Elrond's sons fight orcs. This leaves toddler Aragorn as the new heir to the thrones of the kingdom of Gondor and Arnor. Naturally, this isn't a great position to be in since Aragorn's people aren't able to properly defend him, and Sauron has servants specifically trying to hunt down and kill off the bloodline. So his distant relative Elrond agrees to take in the child and his mother. In Rivendell, Elrond comes to love Aragorn as his adoptive son. He gives him the name Estel, which means hope, and he keeps the young Númenórean in the dark regarding his lineage for a long time. It isn't until the boy turns 20 that the Elven Lord feels his ward is ready for the responsibility. At that point, he tells him his true name and title. When Elrond tells Aragorn who he is, he also takes the opportunity to give him some of the heirlooms of his ancestors. The most important of these is the shards of Narsil, the splintered pieces of a sword that had belonged to Aragorn's ancestors for thousands of years. Aragorn's ancestor Elendil had used it in battle against Sauron, but he'd been defeated and the sword had been broken. However, Elendil's son, Isildur, used the broken pieces to strike out in desperation, cutting off the ring in the process. After that, the sword shards had been carefully preserved as an heirloom of the royal house.
Shards of Narsil. Blade that cut the ring from Sauron's hand.
Aragorn would eventually use the reforged sword in battle against Sauron during The Lord of the Rings. At 20 years old, Aragorn is doing pretty well for himself. He already has a reputation in battle, and he's just found out that he's the heir to not 1, but 2 thrones. The day after Elrond tells him who he really is, he heads out into the woods, strolling along and singing to himself. As he walks, he suddenly runs into a beautiful elf maiden whom he's never met before. Aragorn introduces himself and finds out that the elven woman is none other than Elrond's daughter, Arwen. And yes, that does make them very distant relatives. At this point, Arwen is nearly 3 millennia old, and she's regarded as one of the most beautiful elves that ever lived in Middle-earth. Age differences aside, it's love at first sight for the young man. His mother warns him that, as a mortal man, he's aiming way above his pay grade. Elrond recognizes the lovesick glances in his face too, and isn't too happy about it. However, he tells Aragorn that they'll leave the matter for another day, and the forlorn ranger leaves Rivendell soon afterward. When Aragorn leaves Rivendell, he heads into some of the wilder regions of Middle-earth. Here he spends the next few decades developing his skills as a ranger. Just a few short years into his wanderings, Aragorn meets Gandalf the Grey. The wizard and the exiled king become fast friends, and they even head out on several journeys together. While Aragorn is already a good warrior at this point, the relationship with Gandalf helps the young man learn a good deal of wisdom, too. Eventually, the pair of wanderers begin to travel together less often, but their well-established friendship carries on over the years until they find themselves once again side by side as the events of The Lord of the Rings unfold. Aragorn's first visit to the green fields of Rohan takes place during the reign of Theoden's father, Thangol. While very little is reported about his specific actions, it's said in the appendix of The Return of the King that Aragorn fights in Thangol's armies. On top of that, Aragorn tells Éomer in the Two Towers that, "I have been in this land before, more than once, and ridden with the host of the Rohirrim, though under other name and in other guise." However, for all of his time spent in Rohan, the real action doesn't pick up until he heads south into Gondor. Once again, though, as in Rohan, he goes under another name.
He's one of them rangers. Dangerous folk they are, wandering the wilds. What his right name is, I've never heard, but round here, he's known as Strider.
One of Aragorn's most triumphant moments in The Return of the King comes when he captures the fleet of black ships and uses them to arrive at the Battle of the Pelennor Fields just in the nick of time. However, it turns out that this isn't the first time he's tangled with these piratical foes of Gondor. The first time happened way back when he was still a youngster. After serving King Thangol of Rohan, Aragorn heads south in order to pay Gondor a visit. At the time, he goes by the name of Thorangil, which means Eagle of the Star. Using this secret identity, he becomes a valued advisor and ally of the Steward of Gondor, Ecthelion II. At the time, the maritime people of Umbar are threatening Gondor with their black ships, and the young advisor offers to deal with the problem.
I do not know what strength is in my blood, but I swear to you I will not let the White City fall.
With the blessing of the steward, Aragorn gathers a small fleet and sails to Umbar, where he arrives at night and burns most of their ships. Aragorn himself kills their leader in single combat and then successfully withdraws his tiny armada with just a few casualties. While Aragorn is spending time in Gondor as Thorongil, he has a notable run-in with the steward's son, Denethor. Just 4 years away from becoming the steward himself, Denethor is one of the few Gondorians who's not enamored with the mysterious savior from the north. The situation isn't helped by the fact that even though Denethor is the heir to his father's stewardship, everyone seems to elevate the disguised Aragorn above him.
This is no mere ranger. He is Aragorn, son of Arathorn. You owe him your allegiance.
Even Denethor's own dad appears to put him second to the wandering hero, which may go a long way in explaining his future behavior toward his own son, Faramir. The greatest issue between the two men, though, comes in the form of their wizardly affiliations. Denethor is a supporter of Saruman, while Aragorn is Team Gandalf. Of course, Aragorn isn't ready to reclaim the throne yet, so instead of heading for Minas Tirith, he leaves Gondor before Denethor becomes the steward. However, rumors later spread that before he left, Denethor figured out Aragorn's true identity. Instead of going to Minas Tirith after the raid on Umbar, Aragorn says farewell to his future subjects and abruptly takes off, traveling towards Sauron's domain. While scarce on details of Aragorn's adventures, the appendix of The Return of the King tells us that he passed out of the knowledge of men of the West and went alone far into the east and deep into the south, exploring the hearts of men, both evil and good, and uncovering the plots and devices of the servants of Sauron. And at the Council of Elrond, Aragorn explains, "The leagues that lie between here and Gondor are a small part in the count of my journeys." Basically, after his epic deeds with the Rohirrim and the men of Gondor, Aragorn disappears from the history books. While the details are virtually non-existent, over the following years he wanders across the lands of Middle-earth, learning about its people and studying Sauron's plans. After Aragorn's adventures in Rohan, Gondor, and the lands beyond, he stops by Lothlorien to get some well-earned rest. And it's been nearly 30 years since he first left Rivendell at this point, and he's almost 50 years old. He matured quite a bit during this time thanks largely to his wanderings, along with the fact that the line of Númenórean kings live very long lives and don't fully mature until well into their first century.
You cannot be 80.
87.
Aragorn happens to arrive in Lothlorien right when Arwen is there, visiting her grandmother, Galadriel. The two reunite in the Golden Wood, and this time, Aragorn isn't the only one feeling love-struck. Rather than seeing him as a young buck head over heels in love, Arwen now sees this young king in exile as a sober, mature man, and the two seriously fall in love. When Elrond hears about it, he reluctantly gives his permission to the match, but he says they can only marry if Aragorn defeats Sauron and becomes king. We don't hear much about Aragorn's specific activities for quite a while after the events in Lothlorien. At some point, he visits Moria, although he doesn't love the experience, calling his memory of the place very evil. He shows up one more time before the Fellowship of the Ring. Not long after Bilbo's birthday party, Aragorn agrees to help Gandalf hunt down the mischievous Gollum. While he fails to find the tortured creature before Gollum is captured by Sauron and leaks some important information about the Shire, Aragorn does eventually track Gollum down. He catches him on the edges of the Dead Marshes. The two don't get on very well as Gollum bites his captor, leaving Aragorn to roughly gag him and lead him on a leash. According to his arrangement with Gandalf, the ranger takes Gollum on a long trek north to Mirkwood, where he leaves him in prison for the wizard to question later. The next time we see Aragorn is in Bree during the Fellowship of the Ring. During the story told in The Lord of the Rings, Aragorn proves himself worthy of the crowns of Gondor and Arnor, and ultimately becomes the king of both kingdoms. His success opens the door for him to finally marry Arwen, and the two become king and queen of the ancient realms.
I choose a mortal life.
Aragorn rules the reunited kingdom under the name Elisar, which means Elfstone, for 120 years. During this time, he restores Orthanc, the tower that had been flooded by the Ents, and he names Faramir the Prince of Ithilien. He also reaffirms the alliance with King Éomer of Rohan and declares the Shire to be free land under his protection. Eventually, at the ripe old age of 210, Aragorn becomes weary and willingly surrenders his life, bringing an end to his long and illustrious career in Middle-earth. Arwen dies in the following year from grief, and their son becomes the new king of the reunited realm. Check out one of our newest videos right here. Plus, even more Looper videos about your favorite stuff are coming soon. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss a single one.